Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. So last week was basically the post-FanFest week where I had to try to recuperate a little bit because although I didn't go to FanFest, I apparently did catch some sort of virus. During that time I was battling a slight cold. Which was also why I had a little bit less energy to put in the videos and all of that good stuff. Still, we're trying to manage a video every day, that's the goal. And of course, right now we're back for EVE Talk. So let's jump right in and let's get started with some plex. That's gonna be at 40 seconds, like that. And oh man, into 5 minutes it took me to prepare the ticker. Plex went up by 6.5 million, so they were at 1,220,000,000 when I was checking for the ticker, but there is still a little bit of momentum going up here, especially if we look at the daily averages here. We can clearly see that we're now crossing the 1.2 billion mark, and the 5-day moving average staying above the 20-day moving average as well. So it looks like there is still a little bit of upwards pressure for plex, but I don't think that it's gonna remain all that high. We can also see that there is a little bit of hesitation with plex dropping back from time to time. At this point I would sell. I think that this is pretty expensive for plex at the moment, but there is still that wild card, of course, of the plex changes coming normally May 9th, where this will be divided by 500 smaller units. So we'll have to see how all of that plays out. Of course, it's also going to be interesting to see how what the chart is going to do with the new plex system. I actually think that it's going to be an entirely new item, so that this will get cut off and that will have a new chart that starts at day 1, which is quite unfortunate, but that's probably what we'll get for plex. So it's going to be decently hard to tell exactly what's happening on the conversion itself, but it's also looking like we have a lot of speculation going into that change as well at the moment. A lot of people taking their positions. All the volumes have been up mostly through this increase in price here, which is a little bit surprising to me. That the volumes are not staying up that much. We're back towards, well, maybe a little bit more than average if we would take the averages around here in the July, August, October. That's actually after the summer, so it's normal that you get lower volumes through the summer, and after the summer here now the volumes picked up a little bit, and here all of a sudden price did shoot up quite substantially. So I wonder how sustainable this is. I still think that we'll see a drop in price. Whether it's before or after the change is difficult to say, but because of the ORM conversion that's going to happen as well, I still think that we'll have prices under pressure when it comes to plex. Next up, the multiple pilot training certificate. A first slight indication that we may be peaking out when it comes to plex at the current prices is the fact that the training certificate is starting to move back on the 5-day moving average. The median daily averages are all over the place. You can see that that is actually a pretty wide spread. If we go here, 1.16 billion, and at the high points 1.26 billion. That's 100 million in between the highs and the lows over the last 10 days, let's say, for the median daily prices. That's quite a shift, which I do think means that there is quite a bit of activity back and forth between people that say, yeah, you know what, I want to still invest in these at current prices, and other people that are actually willing to sell their stocks all of a sudden. One thing that I keep forgetting, let's also take a quick look at plexes in the perimeter trade hubs. Here 1,209,000,000 for the sellers, and the buyers from 1186 to 1188, only 2 million increase, but a pretty sharp decrease of almost 20 million when it comes to the seller prices. This once again should help put a little pressure on the JITA prices as well. I do think that we'll start hesitating, although at the moment the upswing is still going. Next up, the pilot body resculpt going down to well below average here, towards 240 million as an average price. So this little blurb here was a special ORM sale which caused a massive supply increase, and there's that big drop down to 200 million. Then we recovered a little bit, but at the moment it's still under pressure to what I would consider to be cheap prices for the body resculpt. And the fact that average prices here, that's quite interesting in my opinion, or sometimes at like 240 million, indicated that people are actually also selling these straight to the buyers, because the sellers are starting out at 270 million, buyers are at 227 million. So for a 240, 250 average price, you need people that just dump some of their certificates straight to the buyers, which is pretty unusual in a market like this, especially with the low volumes here. Skill extractors next. Of course, very strong correlation between the extractors and plex themselves. 280 million on average, and here again we can see at the tail end 5-day moving average taking off once again, and the median daily prices going up as well. One difference is apparently here the peak up to 300 million. The peak for plex itself is almost back in range, so there is a slight disparity between what skill extractors have been doing compared to their previous peak at the Ascension expansion, and what plex has been doing compared to the Ascension expansion. We're almost there for plex, so skill extractors, I guess, are not, if I had to gamble, will not go back to 300 million, but will remain at this price range for now. And let's get rid of this. 281 million for the sellers of skill extractors, 272 million for the buyers. Really pretty big volumes here in the last 24 hours. You can see here 71, lots of 12s, but then again 70, 81, 63, 97. Those are definitely pretty high volumes that are coming to this market here. I think it's gonna stop the ascent, although the median daily prices here have maybe a small indication that we might be going up. Skill injectors next, taking off towards a 1-year high. That's quite interesting. So skill injectors selling for 697 million ISK. The buyers are at 650 million ISK. Decent volume still coming in. I would say yes. All of this could be in the last 24 hours, so it's still pretty decent, especially considering that we are at a 1-year high here, and people might be hesitating about what to do when it comes to skill injectors. Might be less demand at this current price range, but quite interesting. The skill farms are probably making a little bit of money on this if skill extractors are hesitating, but skill injectors are still going up. Their margins should be increasing once again, so that's good news for them, and it means high demand for skill points. What this exactly means is difficult to say. There are two ways, I think, to look at this. It could be alpha characters, new players that want to get in certain types of ships pretty quickly, just general demand in the game being pretty high due to decently high activity. That's definitely a possibility. Another option though would be Gnostic doctrines. I've heard a video from Test, I think, where they were going to focus very heavily on dreadnoughts, building a huge dreadnought gauge so that they could conceivably defend themselves against the bigger and more ancient entities in EVE Online if they were going to come after them once again, which is a fine plan, but that may of course also mean that there is this push for their members to get the skill points needed for dreadnoughts, and as a result we might see higher demand for skill injectors. So it's pretty interesting. To my surprise, we're staying at pretty high points when it comes to the real life money stuff like plex, like skill injectors, skill extractors, and all of that good stuff. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen through the summer, because in general we should see lower activity and we should actually see lower prices. I unloaded a few of my plex. I think I'll sell a couple more if prices remain like this, but I'm definitely not going all out and selling all my plexes either. It is a store of value for me, and I'm really curious to see what's going to happen when the plex conversion into the microplex, you could say, is going to happen. Next up, we'll be moving on to some minerals. That's at 9:15. There we go. And titanium up a little bit. So this is quite interesting to me here once again. The fact that we've gone up in price towards 5 ISK, we're slowly evolving towards that, but that this also happened on a big volume spike, which is an indication that big amount of buying might have actually happened here. So sometimes you have big volume spike on a downtrend, which is an indication of massive dumping happening and people picking that up as well. But here, increased price and a big spike in the volumes is an indication, I think, that there's been some pretty hefty buying in the titanium market, which is good news for people that are holding the stocks, of course. 481 for the sellers, 448 for the buyers, and this buyer is at 1.7 billion units, which is pretty big. You go up to 4.9 ISK on the seller side, basically, to fill that order, which is quite substantial. So I think we're seeing some pretty serious buying happening here that is increasing the price of titanium. Good to see demand come back. Might once again be due to the nullsec Cold War that's happening there. I do think a lot of people are building massive amounts of capitals, super capitals, just huge dread caches and all of that good stuff in preparation for hopefully a really big nullsec war coming. Pyrite next, trying to go up a little bit, but definitely hesitating. The 5-day moving average is above the 20-day moving average, but it's really almost a sideways movement, just below 6 ISK. I think 582 for the sellers, 568 for the buyers. So Pyrite is staying well under pressure. Volumes are dropping here, which I mean, if this is an indication that stocks are emptying out when it comes to Pyrite, it could be good news. Some serious demand could actually push the price up a little bit, but at the moment, yeah, basically sideways movement for Pyrite, staying below 6 ISK. Next up, we've got Mexalon, holding on quite respectably here at 75 ISK. I have to be honest, this is quite a surprise. 76.94 for the sellers, 71.99 for one first buyer at 5 million units. Not gonna last too long. 70.5 pretty much for the buyers of Mexalon. So a pretty wide margin, and despite that, which should usually put some pressure on the price, we're still seeing a really strong Mexalon market that had to give ground a little bit when it went above 80 ISK, but is still holding quite nicely at around 75 ISK on average. So again, if you're mining in HiSec, then make sure that you prioritize sources of Mexalon. And one thing to note here as well, since the Ascension expansion, we can see a really big volume increase. I still think that this is because of nullsec buying, and that is also the reason why we still have this very strong Mexalon price. Mexalon has been the bottleneck when it comes to nullsec mining. Apparently, that's something that came to the forefront during the Ascension expansion, and it probably still is, even with the nerf to the Rorcal. As a result, there is still a serious amount of Mexalon buying that is happening from nullsec in order to be ready and get their industry going, get all of their supers and capital productions up and running. They need stocks from HiSec to fill the Mexalon gap, which is why this one is doing so much better. Isogen next. Isogen, very reminiscent of the Pyrite chart, so slightly up but definitely hesitating. 53 ISK though, above 50. That's, I think, good news. Slight volume spike here on an increased price as well. So once again, there may be some decent buying happening when it comes to some of the HiSec minerals. Here's Isogen, 53.36 for the sellers, 49.78 for the buyers. What could be important is if these sellers don't come with too much new supply here and can actually push the buyers above 50 ISK, that could actually start a serious floor for Isogen and provide it the opportunity to start trading in higher ranges. But of course, for that, we'll need a lot of demand compared to supply, which supply is pretty constant, I would say. But if the demand is there for, again, that big nullsec push into the production at the moment, prepping for wars, then that is definitely a possibility. Noxium next, another indication of strong demand here. Noxium picking up towards 400 ISK on today's median daily price so far. That's definitely pretty important, I would say. 399.41 for the sellers of Noxium, 372.80 for the buyers of Noxium. Again, up in price here. This is a bit more reminiscent of Tritanium, so Noxium and Tritanium doing a leg up. trying to trade at 400 at the moment. Quite substantial compared to the previous bottom price of 290 ISK. This is already a little bit of a profit that could have been taken, especially on the people right here on these volume spikes that have bought at this trade range of around 300 ISK. Quite nice, a third, so that's like 30% profit to be made by dumping right now. Hopefully though, this is because of higher demand, and that would of course mean that we could finally start to trade at higher ranges in a more sustained manner, get a bit more ISK per hour for our high-sec mining as well, and thus see a slightly healthier mineral market, I would say, after all of the Rorcal supply that came in really massive amounts. So quite interesting so far. High-sec minerals seem to be going up across the board, although pyrite and isogen are still hesitating a little bit. Let's take a look at the null-sec minerals. Here is Zydrine bumping off of 950 ISK up to 1000. Sellers are at 1000 ISK basically, and buyers are at 982. So this is basically moving sideways now, although in the last week or so we can see that we've gone up by 50 ISK, and the sellers are finally above 1000 ISK once again, which is still a decently good price for Zydrine, right? This is not very expensive, I would say 1000 ISK, but the fact that we're back above that with some momentum and that we're seeing all the high-sec minerals go up as well could be an indication that Zydrine might be working on an increased price. Here is Megasite finding a bottom at 1265 apparently. Here 5-day moving average going up a little bit, and the median daily price here 1341. So the bottom 1270 currently selling for 1368, and the buyers are at 1280, the first one coming in. So again, increased demand is apparently happening in the mineral market, and we're seeing Megasite make a bit of a comeback towards 1400 ISK already, right here on the seller side of things. So again, another indication that there might be higher demand for minerals across the board, and I would read that as null-sec Cold War preparations for a bigger one, hopefully. Let's take a look at Morphite. Could be interesting as well. Well, it's trying. So if we take a look at the chart like this, so we actually see a little bit of movement again in the last week or so. Morphite up. It's not substantial from 9000 ISK to 9373 ISK. It's not great, but the fact that sellers are going up towards 9700 and that the first sell orders that are a little bit older at 10,000 ISK are coming into view, I think is once again an indication that sellers are managing to sell their Morphite, and that demand is once again slowly picking up in the mineral market. Hopefully this can be sustained. I do think that keeping an eye on a null-sec activity when it comes to industry could be very important to gauge whether or not this is something that is going to maintain itself in the longer term. And of course, a null-sec war would be awesome, I think, for people like myself that have been building up stocks of minerals and are waiting for a better sell opportunity. So the first few signs of higher demand, possibly a nice opportunity once a war starts, are finally there in the mineral market. After basically months and months of increased supply, not enough demand, and lower prices. Next up, the PI market, 1820. Okay, let's take a look at that. And we'll start here as always with the construction blocks that were doing really well last week. They had to give ground a little bit, so we're back to 13,500 ISK pretty much, I think. Sellers 13,789, buyers 13,200, 580 ISK margin here starts to be pretty decent. We can see that that decrease in price, and the buyers are trying to pick it up a little bit lower, but we're still well above average. More than 13,000 ISK for construction blocks is definitely above average. 12.5, maybe a little bit below that is probably an average price. So still a good time to sell, but we are starting to be under pressure a little bit. Consumer electronics next, obviously around 10 days ago at a 1-year high of almost 17,000 ISK here, 17.4 on one day. That doesn't last forever, and here again in a second leg down we are coming under pressure. Let's see if the sellers are still at 15k. No, 14,900, 14,000 for the sellers, for the buyers as well, so pretty wide margin of almost 800 ISK. And this is the sign that once again supply is coming back, maybe demand is not staying as high either, and thus we are starting to move back down. Still, consumer electronics almost 15,000 ISK for the sellers and 14,000 ISK for the buyers. If you look at the entire chart, once again still way above average, but starting to be under pressure. Coolants next have been under pressure since February, where the 1 year high happened above 15,000, actually 16,000 ISK. We're now heading back towards 12,000, which would start to be close to an average price. 12,400 for the sellers, 11,670 for the buyers. Pretty decent margin here on the downside of coolants, which are coming back towards a more average price range, I would say. So still okay to sell, but be patient enough to at least put up a sell order for that. Don't sell straight to the buyers anymore, because I think you're starting to get a little bit less than what you could get for coolants right here. Enriched uranium next, that was actually on a bit of a plateau for several weeks at a really high price range of 17,000 to 18,000 ISK, is also coming under pressure now, dipping below 17,000. 17,400 for the sellers, 16,600 for the buyers. That's actually not as wide a margin as I would have expected. So enriched uranium still well above average, a really good price for that at the moment, but once again starting to be under pressure. So quite interesting. Minerals, general picture was up a little bit. PI so far, general picture seems to be under pressure a little bit. Here is mechanical parts, really big dive down in the last week as well, towards 13,500 for the sellers, 13,000, even 12,380 for the buyers here. If we disregard just one buy order, that's a really wide margin of more than 1,000 ISK. That's almost worrying at how fast this pullback is right here in mechanical parts, and could be part of or an indication that the fuel market and the PI related to fuels may have been manipulated a little bit to get to those higher prices. But now supply is coming in, and prices are going very quickly towards average prices for these goods. Oxygen next, also under pressure, try to crawl out of the hole that it has created itself after reaching 550. You know, oxygen is very easily produced. It's only a processed material. So as a result, when we do get a really high price, you have this chance that oversupply is created massively, and thus we were dropping below average. Unfortunately, it's not over yet. We're once again at pretty cheap oxygen. 420 for the first seller, 436 for the next one, 406 ISK for the buyers. You know, if this disappears and we actually see buy orders below 400 ISK, you might want to invest in that, but keep in mind, processed planetary material, very easy to produce in massive quantities, so it's always a little bit riskier to invest in that. Robotics next, also again we can see the pressure after the 1 year high here up to 130,000 ISK. Still doing all right, 115,000 ISK for the sellers, 109,000 for the buyers. Still very much above average, but once again we can see supply. This is a full front page in the last 24 hours, and it's more than that, almost two of them in fact, 1.5 of fresh supply. So this is constantly competing with each other. In the last 24 hours we're talking about 119,000 ISK down to 115,800. That is quite a decent spread for new supply coming in the last 24 hours. The buyers here are slowly edging towards less than 100,000 on robotics. Thus the pressure here is natural, and of course is going to sustain itself, I think, at the moment, because we're still selling above average. Rocket fuel next, that one is definitely, yeah, try to go back down towards an average of 12.5k, but nope, going back up a little bit. Quite interesting, 14,400 for the sellers, 13,000 for the buyers. So rocket fuel, still a really good price for this good, and the one unusual one that is actually up a little bit in price. Self-harmonizing power cores next. As expected, this was a little bit of a bubble because of the announcement of the drilling rigs, the new set of structures, but it wasn't going to last because they won't be seen before the winter. So here I actually think that we'll see pretty big supply. Yep, look at that, last 24 hours, full front page, 570, 500, 535. You know, there's quite a bit of supply, and so even here, this 5-day moving average, after crashing down quite substantially, tries to go back up, but I think the pressure is going to be on. The real thing is going to be, will the buyers dip below 2 million, and then will the sellers feel the pressure to follow suit and start to edge towards 2 million and below for self-harmonizing power cores? I think if the rest of the PI is continually under pressure, if you see lower demand through the summer, that this could actually happen, and thus we might see a right buy opportunity form somewhere in the summer at less than 2 million for these goods, which would be right on time, of course, for building up your stocks, getting ready for the winter expansion with the drilling rigs with the new set of structures, and thus maybe even make a little bit of money on speculation on that as well. That would be what my crystal ball tells me. Next up here, we've got superconductors, 12.5k, basically on its average, I would say. 13,400 is still really decent price for the sellers. The buyers, though, at 12,500 ISK are probably around their average. So again, we see it happening here. 306,000 units being dumped is of course also going to put some pressure on the price. If you want to sell superconductors, do so on the seller side of things. Don't go straight to the buyers, because those are basically just your average price. You can still get a little bit better than that with a little bit of patience. Test cultures next. This is one that I've been building up stocks below 8,000 ISK. Buyers though 8,900. Sellers 8,900, I'm sorry. Buyers 7,975. Almost not worth it to pick up more stocks of test cultures, but keep in mind we are at the lower end of the chart for test cultures. We might need some patience though. As I've said, we're seeing a lot of these guys under pressure at the moment. If the summer brings lower activity and lower demand of this as well, test cultures might actually play with their previous real bottoms of like 6,000 ISK, 6,000 to 7,000 ISK. If that happens, I'm basically planning to buy more of that to lower my average purchase price. But below 8,000 ISK, I made a small investment in test cultures already. And finally, we get wetware mainframes, again tied to structures. We can see that demand is not as strong anymore. Supply, not a very unified picture, but this is almost a full front page in the last 24 hours. And thus we do get this picture of a good that is under pressure for sustained or in a sustained way. Slight uptick here again on the announcement of the new set of structures, but that was not to last because they were not coming anytime soon. So yeah, PI under pressure in general. Next up, we've got Tech 1 ships, a little bit different than previously, 27.35, like that. Yep, I'm at the right place. So I decided to cut this down a little bit and just take some ships that might be interesting, that are a little bit better, bigger as well. I don't think it's very useful to check Tech 1 frigates at this point, because, well, there's just no demand for them. They're only a few 100,000 ISK. That's not going to move anytime soon. So I chose a few battleships, a few popular cruisers, and a few battle cruisers as well, and that's going to be my look at the Tech 1 market. Here, for instance, is the Abaddon, a Tech 1 battleship for the Amar, and it's not good news. Look at that. Despite minerals trying to go back up a little bit in price, the Abaddon just is trading well below average, currently selling for 160 million, and the buyers are at 151 million, and you can just see the lack of demand. So if this keeps up though, the Abaddon, sometimes you see Abaddon fleets in Nasdaq as well. So if this keeps up and we keep going down here to the average prices, more supply comes in and we get everything below 160 million, we might see a Nasdaq Alliance make a big move on this and purchase that, and you might have a slight opportunity to make a trade on it, but it remains really, really risky with the lack of actual demand at the moment. So this is not good for the Tech 1 producers. Of course, their margins with mineral prices going up and ship prices going down are just being crushed at the moment. Caracal next. Here we can clearly see the effect of the Ascension expansion. Used to be 11 to 12 million for a Caracal, dips down below 10 million, and it's still under pressure at the tail end here as well. Caracal selling for 9.4 million, buyers are at 8.7 million. I think that a lot of producers will still have stocks of the very cheapest minerals as well. So it's again not a good sign for new manufacturers though, or manufacturers that are looking to get into these production cycles right now, because you have lower ship prices but higher costs of buying your minerals. Next up, we get the Kovder. So I also added a few mining barges in this one as well. Again, the post-ascension dip to 21 million here, that downtrend due to the lower and lower mineral prices. Rorkalnorf, a bit of a comeback, but again here at the tail end, despite the fact that minerals seem to be doing well, the Tech 1 ships are under pressure, and the reason is going to be lack of demand, of course. 24.5 million for the sellers, 22.4 for the buyers. Hurricane next. Hurricane though test alliance doctrine, I think. So this is one that actually went up to 54 million. Not bad, probably around its average, dipping back a little bit after that, but probably one of the stronger markets when it comes to the Tech 1 ship market. Almost 50 million for the sellers, 43 million for the buyers. So yeah, if you're looking to build a battle cruiser, I would say build Hurricanes, because it is still a doctrine of some of the larger nullsec alliances at the moment. Next up here, we get the Maelstrom. As we can see right here again, before Ascension, 200 million, 190 to 200 million was definitely possible. The Ascension dip, a bit of a comeback here in January, but it was not the last. We're currently trading well below average. A little bit of a spike here, but again, we're already on our way back down. Currently, Maelstroms are being sold for 165 million, buyers 153.5 million. And again, you can see the lack of demand here. That is not good news for producers of these ships. Megatron next. Alright, actually tried to go back towards its average, 180 million, twice already. In the last few weeks, again under pressure, but at least he tried. That's quite surprising. So Megatron selling for 60 million though, that's 20 million below that average. 146 for the buyers, and slightly more buyers, I guess, for Megatron, which allows it the opportunity to sometimes bump its price up a little bit back towards its normal average. I also chose the Prophecy. I think sometimes you see Prophecy fleets in nullsec, I'm not entirely sure. You do see a couple of demand bumps right here, but again, before this, 60 million for a Prophecy was normal. Ascension expansion comes in 45 million as a bottom, and currently sellers are at 50 million, buyers are at 46 million, so slight demand uptick right here, but nothing too drastic, and again, in the last few weeks here, under pressure. Scorpion next, another battleship. I don't think you see huge Scorpion fleets all that often. So here it is extremely pronounced. Look at that, 180 million average. Ascension expansion hits. All of a sudden we have this massive volume spike, but it's just crazy supply coming in from cheap minerals, because for some reason the Scorpion managed to hold on through the November expansion really well, thus dropping the price to 140 million, and we're now just basically trading Scorpions at these bottom prices. 150 for the sellers, 136 million for the buyers. For such a cool looking battleship, it's definitely really pretty damn cheap. So Scorpions, yeah, not great at the moment either when it comes to the margins. And finally we've got the Vexor, a little bit of an uptick right here, up to even a daily average price of 12 million, not bad. This is of course due to the Vexor redesign that's coming. I like the redesign because it's very close to the Vexor. It's an iconic ship of EVE Online, of course, but it'll just have all the bells and whistles with I think like a dorsal plating that retracts a little bit, and of course also the harsh points that will get hidden, better engine effects and all of that good stuff. So all of a sudden we did see some interest in the Vexor come back, probably some speculators thinking that they should at least build some stocks of these when the changes to the Vexor actually hit, and hopefully then be able to sell at a better price. But back under pressure already, back under 10 million already as well, 9.9 million for the sellers, 9.5 for the buyers. So the Tech One ship market under pressure despite the fact that minerals are coming back a little bit. Next up we have the Tech 2 market, so let's go through this pretty quickly. Unfortunately at 34.30 activity here seems to have decreased. It's all about basically finding that buy opportunity. The Aries 20.75 on average here, buyers done below 20 million, could actually be interesting if you want to speculate on a Tech 2 ship. The Aries right here, lack of demand, you can probably pick some up at 20 million, which is right here on the chart. So this is looking pretty interesting to jump in and hope for that Nosec war to bring back a bit of destruction of some interceptor fleets, and thus the replacement allowing you an opportunity to sell. Yep, Aries, buyers below 20, sounds pretty interesting. The Claw next, also under pressure a little bit, but we would like to see claws below 19 million, I think. Yeah, 19.6 million for the buyers. Again, it looks like a pretty interesting picture. If you want in on some cheap interceptors, this is probably the time to make your move. The Crow next, that one unfortunately is staying a little bit above the average. Buyers are 21.5 million. You could try it. You can again see that there's not that much demand for Crows and decent supply coming in, but I would say that the Aries is looking a little bit more of like a no-brainer. Next up here we've got the Aries actually finally coming back to an average price here, so this increase in price had to happen at some point, but it's nowhere near an actual spike or anything like that. And what? No orders, no sell orders found for the Aries. That's a little bit strange. Yeah, all right. No orders found matching my search criteria. No Aries being sold in Jita. So right now, if you have some lying around, you might want to put them on the market and maybe try for a crazy price. Not sure exactly what this means. Right here in perimeter, there's only 5 of them being sold. The rest of that is a little bit further away. So we'll see. Next week could give an interesting Aries price depending on where the sellers are going to try to sell their Aries at. Flycatcher next, under pressure a little bit as well. Currently selling for 55.7. Buyers are at 55.7 million. Of course, a little bit of a spike due to the graphics update here, so that still need to be digested, and I will need to wait for another spiky opportunity to come. So we'll be looking at 50 million for buying of Flycatchers, so still a little bit too early. Heretic next, that was pretty damn decent here, started at 44.7 and went up to 59 million. Of course that doesn't last. We actually don't want this to last. We want this speculation to be very volatile. So on its way back down already, and we are looking at 45 million on the buyer side. Not yet though, so still a little bit too early for the Heretic, but finally showing a little bit of Tech 2 trading opportunity. Next up here we've got the Hound. So shot up and is already on its way back down, but once again here we're looking at basically 18 million or something like that for buyers on the Hound, so still a little bit too early. Once again, Malediction next here, it's Interceptor, but I don't think so. We want buyers below 20 million, still at almost 21 million, so that's a big no. Manticore next, right in between the charts, 22 million for the buyers, not that much supply, so nope. Nemesis next. All right, are we starting to edge towards or at least below 20 million on the bars? Yeah, 19 million could be interesting, right? I mean, I would prefer these to be gone as well. Below 19 million becomes no-brainer, but being able to pick up a Nemesis at 19 million, you can see the lack of demand, you can see the big supply. This could be all right to pick up a few Nemesis at, let's say, 19.1, 19.2, and just be ready for some Nosec activity. Purifier jumping up a little bit, so 24 million, currently selling for 24.2. Maybe if you manage to buy, let's say, at this bottom right here, buyers 20 to 21 million, you could try to sell a few, but yeah, if you're looking for the investment, not the right time once again. And finally, the Sabre dropping back quite substantially on the chart as well. But again, we're looking for less than 50 million. Yeah, 45 million for the Sabre. Again, not that much demand, pretty decent supply. So there you go, Tech 2 markets. Again, we need a bit more Gnostic activity, I think, to get sell opportunities. But Sabre looks interesting, Nemesis looks interesting, Ares and Claw as well. At pretty low prices at the moment. So you might be able to pick up some really cheap Tech 2 ships and later down the line on hopefully some Gnostic activity get some profits out of that. Next up, Tech 3 markets. That's at 40 minutes. Like that. And Confessor, let's take a look here because we're starting to finally see a few data points up a little bit in price. Sellers at 32 million, buyers at 28.4 million. So the massive stocks of Confessors at 29 and 30 million have finally been absorbed by the market. We're going to start to see a little bit of volatility here. The question is, can we start to see higher prices? And for that, supply is still pretty damn high, so it remains risky, but it's good to see a little bit of volatility, a little bit of movement on the chart. Hecate next, we can see that here, that is what we do want to see, jumps up to 50 million on the median daily prices here. Hopefully supply is not too huge. No, last 24 hours we're not seeing that much coming in here, 20 here, 12 here, but at 39 million, a couple coming in at 35 million as well. But finally it looks like Tech 3 destroyer market is set for a little bit of volatility, and of course your buying opportunities right here at 29 million are over. So I hope that you have bought at least a few of those and that you're ready in case that we do see a big increase in price here. I bought some stocks, not a lot of them, but yeah, look at this here now. The Jackdaw also went as low as 27 million for a couple days on end, but that is finally being absorbed here, and we now see not too much fresh supply. Last 24 hours, not that many of them, and sellers up to 33 million for the Jackdaw. So finally a little bit of volatility. And finally here we've got this Vapel that had to work through stocks at 30 million, finally did so, and Vapel jumped up to 35 million. Already sellers are coming in trying to unload at these better prices, but hopefully we can actually start to see some market volatility in the Tech 3 market, giving you guys an opportunity to sell those Tech 3 destroyers that you bought at 29, 30 and even 27 million. Now the cruisers could be more interesting, of course. We know that there's rebalancing on the horizon, and at the moment I guess people are following my own expectation that the nerf bat might not be good news for Tech 3 cruisers. So here are the legions, lack of demand, very clear, 150 million for the buyers, sellers are at 125 million, so very cheap Tech 3 ships at the moment. Loki next, coming from a bottom price of 110 million, that is crazy low, so it's natural that it comes up just a little bit, but buyers 105 million, sellers 118 million, extremely low prices, 1 year lows, news of rebalance and no sign of these prices going up. This could be a big gamble, right? So if you want to take this big gamble and hope that this is actually going to announce something special and very interesting when it comes to the Tech 3 rebalance, then this would be your time to buy, of course. But personally, I think that the nerf bat might just swing pretty damn hard. They might just want to get rid of the Tech 3s as basically the doctrines that have replaced Tech 1 battleships in many cases, just because they can get battleship sized tanks, but they have the mobility. As a result, they've just been taking away jobs of other ships, and I think the aim for CCP is going to be to get rid of that, and the chances, I would say, are pretty low that we'll see something that's very interesting that would actually create that higher demand for Tech 3 ships all of a sudden. Proteus next, again, look at that, going to a 1 year low, 120 million, sellers 124, buyers 114 million. So if you're planning to use Tech 3s at some point, of course you can pick up a few cheap hulls, but for the investment I would say it's pretty risky. Finally here we get the Tengu, again 1 year low and still struggling to go anywhere. Still supply coming in. Look at that full front page here, 125.7 million. Buyers are at 117. Extremely low prices, and yeah, the market is not expecting good news when it comes to the rebalance of Tech 3 ships, unfortunately. So if you want an opportunity, then I think that we'll have to look at the destroyers that have basically been oversupplied for so long that you should by now have some of these destroyers lying around that you bought for less than 30 million, and hopefully on some market volatility you can get a little bit of profit out of those. And finally, the extra product 4430. I'm going to go through the salvage materials. I'm pretty curious about all of that. It's been a long time since we've checked that, so I think materials, salvaged materials, and the regular stuff. So let's take a look at these charts here. Alloyed titanium bar is pretty low. We've got a massive volume spike and we're going pretty low here again. So yeah, looks like oversupplied quite drastically, currently selling for 21,000 ISK. And last 24 hours here, 21,000. Well, buyers, they're there, but they want to buy for less than 20,000 ISK. So this looks like very low prices at the moment for this salvage. Next up here, we've got armor plates, obviously a 1 year low and just languishing at the bottom here. Is this the right time to buy? It could be if you have a long enough horizon. Let's see if it's a general picture. Artificial neural networks, basically trading at 10,000 ISK. We had a little bit of volatility here, but this is definitely too flat to risk a lot on. Broken drone transceivers, actually a winner here, went pretty high up to 30k, is on its way back down, but definitely trading well above average, so it's not a unified picture. Interesting. Burnt logic circuits though, way down to a 1 year low right now, so very cheap. This I find pretty interesting. I would be willing to buy some burnt logic circuits at this price here, 38,000, right in between these two. I think that would be my move. This is the type of chart that I do like, right? I look for 1 year lows. I look for something that has gone down drastically in the last few months, and this is one of those examples. I think I'm gonna try and risk a small investment in burnt logic circuits. Then of course we need the patience, right? We need something to happen to bring this back, but who knows? This one seems interesting. Capacitor consoles, definitely trading well below average, trying to go up a little bit, but still definitely low at the moment. Short micro circuits had a little bit of volatility, but is on its way back down, unfortunately. Conductive polymer here, pretty high price, 12.5 thousand, coming from 2,500, is showing that there is some opportunity in salvage here and there. That's quite interesting. Look at that, increase in price here throughout an entire year. So if you have conductive polymers, you could definitely look into selling those. Conductive thermoplastics, basically pretty flat right here, not much to say. Lawrence fluids, another one that's actually pretty high and on its way back down. So if you have some of that stuff lying around, definitely go for the sell right here. Nanite compound, pretty high as well, quite interesting. All right, current pump, all right, definitely above average, but not at its very high point. Damaged artificial neural networks, yeah, a little bit of a premium since the Ascension expansion as well. That's quite interesting. It is definitely Ascension expansion related right here. Drone transceivers are up. Enhanced ward consoles were way up or on their way back down a little bit. Fright interface circuits going down. Impetus consoles, definitely an Ascension spike right here. Armor plates, intact armor plates going really quite high, selling for 5.7 million for intact armor plates. Yeah, not bad. Intact shield emitters, pretty high. Logic circuits, those are down, Tech 2 related. And interface circuits, not good either, Tech 2 related at bottom prices once again. You know, this seems pretty interesting for maybe a buy opportunity. Again, it's a big gamble. I don't have any specifics, just that the chart looks decently interesting to risk a few hundred million on. So logic circuits, pretty low as well. Lawrence fluids, well, at bottom prices. Shield emitters, pretty average here. I wouldn't make a move on that. Melted capacitor consoles up a little bit. Micro circuits, nope. Nanite compounds, pretty flat as well. Power circuits, look at that, tick 2 salvage, pretty damn low at the moment as well. Obviously trading at 1 year low price point and hesitating a little bit as well, which is quite interesting, right? If this would continue to go down, then maybe it's too early, but here we get this slight bump up right here that could make it interesting to make a move on this one. Power conduits next also went pretty low, but on their way back up a little bit. Interesting. Scorched telemetry processor, so some of the tick 1 stuff has been doing really well since the Ascension expansion. You could still try to sell that. Single crystal super alloy beam, smash triggered unit, look at that, used to be less than around 1000 ISK and now currently trading for 4400, not bad, quadrupling of the price here. So something that I completely missed and should have checked on, to be honest. Here is tangled power circuits after the Ascension expansion, shooting up quite substantially in price. Telemetry processor, nope, not exactly. But the thruster consoles, look at that, starting a year ago, 1250, currently trading for 14,000 ISK, 10 times the price over 1 year. Trigger units next, trigger power circuits, pretty low price at the moment. Could be worth it to build up some stocks. And then ward consoles actually trading at a high price. And of course, what we want to gamble on, if I would gamble on something like the logic circuits, is that an increase in price like that could happen again, or that something like this could happen again, or where is that nice one here, thruster consoles here. That's an incredible 1 year chart. Obviously, if you have those lying around, go and sell them right now, because this is a 1 year high. That's 10 times the previous price. Looks pretty damn good to sell these at the moment. And who knows, there might be increased supply coming down the pipeline that was gonna bring this down. And for some of these other ones, like the burnt logic circuits, we might actually see a turnaround as well for some reason. And us building up some stocks of this could be pretty good if we would buy now and we would then get a chart like that. Like, goddammit, where is it? Thruster consoles like this in the upcoming year. Man, don't you wish you'd have bought at these 1 year low price points here. So yeah, take a look throughout the entire salvage materials. I think there are some buy opportunities, definitely some sell opportunities as well, and a lot of that is clearly Ascension related. Interesting market. I feel a little bit bad for having missed out on all of that with the Ascension expansion, but there you go. Checking after the fact, I'm still spotting some interesting ones in there as well. So that's going to be it for this ETH Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.